as 2 weeks ago, where instead of, you're just going to be modeling and UVing both your furniture objects and your decorative objects if you haven't started working on them already. So again, I'm only looking for models and UVs for these. You don't need to do texturing unless you have time and you want to. Also, I'd recommend going through and just like starting to block in some of the other objects in your scene for like filler objects if you have time. And then once you've done all of the modeling and texturing, throw any new models you've made, specifically furniture and decorative, but if you have any other ones, put those in as well. Put all your new models into your scene and render again. And if you could do one render for your day lighting and one render for your night lighting, and then just test out different camera angles for each, just sort of like, again, playing with, you know, working up to whatever your final camera angles are going to be for your final. Does that make sense? Cool. And then what to submit? I just need a zip file with your, the Maya scenes for your objects and the updated renders of your scenes, as well as any reference images that you used for modeling. Yeah, all right, so that's pretty much that. Any questions on that? All right, so this is the one that is due next Monday on, I think, the 28th, even though we have off. So again, due next Monday, no class next Monday. The other assignment that will be due when you come, oh wait, sorry. There is also the turntable assignment. So this one is also due next Monday. So this one is basically take whatever feedback that you get from the every 25th frame turntable renders that should have been due today. Incorporate that feedback into your turntable and actually render the turntable, the full turntable, with your hero object in it. If you could also render a wireframe overlay and throw that onto the turntable, just so you have two different versions. It should take like an extra 4 minutes probably to get all those wireframe renders out. And if anyone wants to, I can go over just like a really quick review about how to set up those wireframes again for Arnold. Anywho, so for this, expectations, like, if there's specific feedback given about like, you can't see anything because of lighting or camera angle, like, please actually correct that. And then for the wireframe, I'm looking for that to be overlaid as just a black outline or white if your object is like super dark and white is easier to see, with the original renders and textures beneath it. So what I don't want is just sort of like a white object with a black wireframe on it. And then the same, pretty much same stuff from last week where like, I went over, like your turntable should have walls, floors, all that good stuff. That's all the same. And again, I've linked that little turntable tutorial if that is helpful for people and they want to review that again. So any questions on the expectations for that? All right. In terms of what to submit, if you could just submit me 2 video files, one with the wireframe, one without, and you do not need to zip the files. Actually, for this one, I actually prefer you don't zip them. But yeah, so that's pretty much that one. So those are both due next week, the turntable and modeling of your hero objects, etc. The assignment that is due when you get back is kind of a hodgepodge. So like, ideally you'd pretty much model all of the additional background models for your scene. So like any just sort of additional clutter you have that's like not your main objects, that would be done. You're also going to texture your furniture and decorative object, more or less same requirements as the texture for your hero object for that one. And then, again, add the objects into your scene and re-render with the day or night lighting. I'll go over, it says use specific render angles for your final. I'll go over that in a minute, but yeah. So just, again, in terms of the objects for your background scenes, I'm all for stuff like places looking cluttered, if possible, because I feel like humans are kind of cluttered, gross people by nature. Obviously, it depends on the space that you're working in, like, presumably, like, hopefully a hospital doesn't have a bunch of random stuff laying around on the floor, whereas like a child's bedroom might. So tailor that to your space, but one thing you can do is consider making objects that can be easily modified. And I'm actually going to go over a little bit of MASH today, and that's actually really great for sort of populating the scene with random objects, depending on what you're doing. But an example of this might be if you're doing, a kid's room or something, you could make pretty much a single book. So just like model that book, UV it, and then you can just kind of more or less like change the textures slightly or like make some wider, some taller, and you just have a complete populated looking bookshelf with minimal effort in terms of modeling different objects. So that kind of stuff is always good if you're able to do things like that. In terms of the textures for the furniture and decorative, I'm looking for a minimum, get like some basic color in. So if you need like color maps, stuff like that, throw that in, again, at a minimum. Obviously, the more complete your textures are going to be, the more points that you will earn for this particular part of the assignment. And the goal here is, this is so like when you get back, I think that's the last week before finals are actually due officially, like before finals week. So that's the last time you'll have an opportunity to get feedback from your classmates, etc. So you really want everything as polished as you can so you can get, you know, legitimate feedback on stuff that you can improve rather than just like, this kind of doesn't really look finished, question mark. And I'll also be doing crit for that next class, that we actually have class, a little bit maybe more aggressively, like trying to get everyone more involved as kind of like a practice for the final crit when I want you guys to like actually talk more. But yeah, any questions on that? All right. And for this guy, just give me Zapier My project folder, including all of the renders. So the renders specified above from this link, which I'll go over in a minute, and then any textures you have, your Maya files, and reference images, kind of like usual. So for the rendering of day and night lightings, I want you to, at this point, try to like finalize the camera angles that you're going to be using for your final renders. That way, you know, you can get feedback on those as well. So here's the link to the final, like requirements for the final. And you can see if you scroll down in those, there's like a very long list of like specific renders that you have to have. The ones that I would like you to focus on for this week's assignment are these guys here, the in-environment renders. So basically, 4 beautifully rendered unique views, etc. But basically, 4 daylight views and 4 nightlight views. One of these renders for each of the different lightings must have your hero object in it, preferably, since it's supposed to be like your showpiece object, hopefully it would be like largish and kind of like the focal point of that render. And at least 1 or more renders must contain your furniture and decorative objects. The ones that you made, not the ones that your teammates made. And again, just, you know, try to get creative with your camera lighting, do interesting stuff with the lighting and like composition, all that good stuff. So again, you're looking for like 1 hero object and then 1 thing with your furniture and decorative object for both the day lighting and the night lighting. And that's what I expect to see for this assignment here. You do not need to worry about like these showcase renders of just like your individual objects. Does that make sense? All right, cool. So again, this is the assignment that is due on, I guess it would be the 4th, not the 28th. So you can work on this if you want to, if not, kind of whatever. Just be aware that, I mean, at this point you pretty much only have like 3 weeks to do your finals. So by the time you're doing this still leaves basically a week to, you know, finish any texturing that you need to do on these objects, any, you know, modifications to your hero objects, etc., and texture like everything in your scene. So just keeping that in mind, it might make sense to start working on that stuff earlier so you're not like crunch timing super hard. And then for the final itself, don't be surprised if your renders end up taking like, depending on the computer you're using, like 5 to 10 minutes a frame. Like that's not at all unreasonable for a decent looking render with, you know, interesting dynamic lighting and like lots of textures and stuff like that. So any questions on the assignments? Huzzah. All right. Cool. Get rid of that.